Okay, this is a video for the sheep brain dissection for anatomy and physiology. I do not have a person, nor do I have my tripod, so I will be holding the camera and identifying the structures at the same time. So forgive me if you have a problem seeing it. So you should have a sheep brain dissection list of features that you need right here. The first one says the dura mater, and it's really just our meninges. So this is in the whole brain, and hopefully you can see this meningeal covering right here. Okay, so it's this clear, you can see underneath, but it's this whole clear covering over the whole brain. So when you're dissecting, that has to be removed. We'll take a look at that again in a second. But if we go down the list, this is the cerebrum right here. Okay, you have the two hemispheres. You have the frontal lobe is right here. The parietal lobes are here. The occipital lobes in the back, just like the skull bones. Occipital lobes back here. The temporal lobes are on the side. The central sulcus separates the frontal lobe from the parietal lobe, and it is this main sulcus right across here. You can see, hopefully if I hold the brain up like this, that the frontal area is a little bit thinner, and then it widens out right here, and then that's the central sulcus right there. Okay. And then the longitudinal fissure separates the left and the right hemisphere, so that is this here. The gyri are the bumps, and the sulcus are the indentations, and in this case, the sulci are this dark color right here. The cerebellum is the little brain at the back right here. And then if we flip it over, I'll show you on this version. So these are the optic nerves right here. This is cranial nerve 2, and this is the chiasm, the optic chiasm, where they meet and cross. And if you look at it on the one that still has the meninges on it, you can see this one they did a good job of removing everything, so you still see the optic nerves are right here. So in this brain where the meninges has been removed, I asked you to identify the infundibulum, and it's really not even the infundibulum. It is the hole that the infundibulum was attached to. So if you find the optic chiasm and go from here, there's this little hole right here, and this is where the infundibulum is a stalk, and that is where it attached to. And attached to that infundibulum is the pituitary gland. So over here, this is all still attached, and then here is the actual pituitary gland that's attached by a stalk to the infundibulum. But when we take off the meninges, all of this comes off. The olfactory bulbs are cranial nerve 1, and so these are the olfactory bulbs right here. So these are fairly large in a sheep, and think about, why would sheep need to be good smellers, or prey animals in general. The superior and inferior colliculi, so these are reflex centers, visual and auditory reflex centers. So if I've turned it over, I've pulled the cerebellum down, and then it's hard to do with one hand. The superior colliculi are at the top, and the inferior right below them. They kind of do look like, if you have directions, they kind of look like a little booty cheeks right there. So the superior one, or the bigger, fatter one that look like booty cheeks, and then right here is the inferior colliculi. So inferior, superior colliculi. The mammillary bodies, back to this side, where that infundibulum was. So this around it is the mammillary bodies. And then further right here are the cerebral peduncles, or foot pads. So these are motor tracks. And then we have this big bump right here is going to be the pons. The next bump is the medulla, and this is the spinal cord. Okay. I'm going to do this side again. These are olfactory bulbs, optic nerve, optic chiasm. We're calling this the infundibulum, the mammillary bodies, the cerebral peduncles, the pons, the medulla oblongata, and the spinal cord. So now we're going to look at cross section. So this brain has been dissected through the longitudinal fissure. Okay, so most noticeable, if I spread this out right here, hopefully you can see this opening right here. This is the lateral ventricle. Okay, there's two lateral ventricles. If we look at it on this one, might be easier to see that lateral ventricle is that hole right there. So surrounding this lateral ventricle is a corpus, surrounding the lateral ventricle is a corpus callosum, and that is the white matter that connects the left and right hemisphere with each other. So you can see this little kind of U shape right here. Okay. So this, in the middle of it, is the lateral ventricle. And then underneath it, right here, this is the third ventricle. And you can kind of see this gray matter in here. This is the choroid plexus. This is what makes up the cerebral spinal fluid. Okay, and then you have the cerebral aqueduct right here, which you don't have to identify, but then the fourth ventricle is right here in this little nook in the cerebellum. Okay. Then this very round area is the thalamus. So, it's a relay center for all your senses except for olfactory. So this is the thalamus. The hypothalamus, hypo is below, so the hypothalamus is going to be below this right in here. Okay, hypothalamus has all kinds of important functions. It regulates the autonomic nervous system. It controls the endocrine system. It helps with all kinds of things. So very important, but not a very definitive structure. And these are all part of the diencephalon. The thalamus, the hypothalamus, and then the epithalamus, which is actually the pineal gland. And so the best view of the pineal gland is in this model. So just orient, this is the lateral ventricle, this is the corpus callosum, this round area is the thalamus, this is the hypothalamus, and then this little knob right here is the pineal gland, which is a part of the epithalamus. And these three, all the thalamuses, are a part of the diencephalon. And then if we look in the cerebellum, right here, you can see the white matter within the cerebellum, and this is called the arbor vitae because it looks like a tree. Also from this view right here, you can see this obviously is where the optic chiasma or the optic nerve is, and then behind that is usually the mammillary body. It's just hard to see. So this would be the mammillary body. So, oops, got destroyed. Let's look at this view of it. Okay, here we go. All right, so here is our hypothalamus right here. So this is the part of the optic nerve right here. So you can flip it over and see, actually that's the part, this right here is the mammillary body. So you can flip it over and see that was the mammillary body. And then behind this mammillary body, in this area right here, is the side of the cerebral peduncles. And then up here are the superior and the inferior colliculi. So this is just a different view of these structures right here. So you would have, it got pulled off, but the optic nerve would have come out here. This is the mammillary body. This is the cerebral peduncles. And then up here is a superior and inferior colliculi. Okay. And I think that takes it. So just to review, lateral lateral ventricle surrounded by the corpus callosum, so this white structure surrounds it. And then the third ventricle on top of that thalamus, basically. The fourth ventricle down here in the cerebellum. The thalamus, the hypothalamus, and then the pituitary gland, or the pineal gland, would be right here in the arbor vitae.